Hello, this is Todd Luck, and did you know they made a movie of Robert E. Howard's life? Of course, Robert E. Howard is the pulp writer who created the sword and sorcery genre. This is a man who created such immortal characters as Conan the Barbarian, Cole the Destroyer, Solomon Kane. So, if you're going to do a movie about Robert E. Howard, it just boggles the mind about all the cool stuff you could put on the movie poster and the DVD cover. And it ended up looking like this instead. But don't judge a DVD by its cover. This is one of my favorite movies of all time and an absolute must watch if you're a Howard fan. This is a review of The Whole Wide World. This is based on The One Who Walked Alone, Robert E. Howard, The Final Years. This was a memoir by Novelyn Price, and she was a school teacher and aspiring writer who met Robert E. Howard and dated him in the final years of his life. And so the movie was going to be called My Texas Reaver, but they changed it to The Whole Wide World, which is a reference to one of the lines in the movie about how Robert E. Howard is the best pulp writer in the whole wide world. And I think the cover looks like this on the DVD and the movie poster because it's marketed as a love story. But is it really a love story? So the film definitely has some elements of a romance film in it. It does revolve around a series of dates that Novelyn goes on with Howard, and some of the scenes are definitely sweet and romantic, especially early on. However, if you know anything about Robert E. Howard's life, you know that he was a brilliant creator but a troubled man. And in this movie, he is portrayed as being a very difficult human being who can be very hard to love. And at the end, of course, this relationship does not work out. And ultimately, Robert E. Howard will end up killing himself by the end of the movie. So this is a historical drama. This is a tragedy. As far as the romance goes, I would say it's actually an anti-love story, right? A love story is about two people coming together. This is about two people falling apart. And that was just kind of how those final years of his life worked. But it's not all gloom and doom. It is a wonderful tribute to who he was as a human being and the joy that he could bring to Novelyn, that he could bring to his readers. And it is a very entertaining movie, even though it does have a very dark ending. And I would credit how entertaining and wonderful it is to not only Dan Ireland, the director, and this was his first film he ever directed, but also to our two stars. Robert E. Howard is played by Vincent D'Onofrio, who would go on to be well known for his leading role in Law and Order: Criminal Intent and playing the Kingpin in the Daredevil and Hawkeye streaming series. But I will always have a soft spot in my heart for his portrayal of Edgar the Bug in Men in Black, in which he utters one of the greatest lines in cinematic history.
Give me sugar. In water.
Novelyn is actually played by Renee Zellweger. I'm most familiar with her from Me, Myself, and Irene, but she's a superstar. She's been in everything, and The Whole Wide World was how she got her start. This got her her role in Jerry Maguire that launched her career and would eventually let her kick Jim Carrey in the face. The two of them are just pure magic in this movie. And even though they've become super famous and I know who they are, I still don't see them when I watch this movie. All I see are the characters. And that's the highest compliment I can give to an actor. Vincent just knocks it out of the ballpark as Robert E. Howard, and Renee is just so good as Novelyn. It's just such perfect casting. And the conversations between the two of them are so entertaining. The dialogue is just fantastic, whether that's Robert E. Howard, this big tough guy trying to be really sweet and trying to court Novelyn, or the conversations they get in on the creative process, what it takes to be a writer, how Howard creates, and him describing Conan as one of the coolest scenes in the movie that you're seeing here. And they get in arguments about Howard's cynicism towards civilization and humanity. And obviously that's very present in Howard's work, and it's very entertaining to read in his characters, this disdain for humanity, this disdain for society. But it does take a darker turn when you're trying to live it in real life and you are isolated and you put yourself under a lot of pressure. We see Howard trying to take care of his ailing mother, and of course, it does eventually end in a very dark place for Howard. When he learns his mother is going to die, he commits suicide. And I will say that the way that that is handled is done very well. We hear it described at the end, but we do not see it and we do not hear it. And I think that was a great call on the part of this movie, because obviously seeing someone commit suicide on screen could be very triggering for certain people. And honestly, it is a very, very tough emotional ending, even though a lot of this movie is really funny and really enjoyable and really entertaining. It is a hard ending emotionally, and it does make it more palpable that we don't have to see him ultimately killing himself. And it is a very touching ending. It is a very sad ending, and it is a fitting tribute for Robert E. Howard. And the whole movie has a nice reverence to it, to the history. They go out of their way to recreate Robert E. Howard's room that he typed in, and they actually use Robert E. Howard's real works. Whenever you're hearing him say something from one of his stories, it's actually from a real story. And I actually looked up and confirmed all of them. So I'll give you the stories that are referenced in the movie. So the two typewriter scenes where he's working on a story, that is a Conan story called The Jewels of Gwahlur. So the scene where they have their first date and he gives her a copy of Weird Tales is pretty easy, because he tells her the name of the story and we can see it on the cover. It is a Conan story called The Devil in Iron. The scene where he's acting out a boxing match, he says he's working on a boxing yarn. He actually did quite a few of those, and if you're interested, there have been collections of those put out. You can buy a book of just his boxing stories. So the only one I couldn't find a direct reference for was the scene where he talks about a frontier novel he wants to write. He wants to not only deal with the settlers, but also the Indians defending their land. And I couldn't find anything like that, so I don't know if that novel ever happened. He has written a lot of Western short stories, but as far as this novel goes, I don't know if it's something he thought about or if maybe he did it and I just can't find it. Someone who's a little more familiar with Howard's history can maybe fill me in the comments. The scene on the lake should probably be pretty obvious to Robert E. Howard fans. She mentions a naked woman dancing on a pirate ship. And of course, this is a reference to the pirate queen Belit in the Conan story, Queen of the Black Coast. So the scene towards the end where he's extra obnoxious at the restaurant, he's actually describing what is considered by many to be one of his best Conan stories. Red Nails, which features the warrior woman Valeria, who we see here about to be sacrificed. The scene towards the end where he's reading a poem to his mother, that's actually a poem he wrote called The Tide. And so the filmmakers found a book of Robert E. Howard's work while scouting locations, and they saw the poem in there and just thought it would be appropriate for the scene. And I will say it works very, very well. And yes, the short poem that acted as his suicide note at the end was 100% real. This movie is available to watch for free on Tubi. And one of the things that I just discovered while capturing footage for this video is that Tubi does not have the original theatrical release or the original DVD release on their streaming platform. They actually have an extended cut, which I have never seen before, with additional footage. So even if you've seen this movie before, give it a watch on Tubi. You'll be pleasantly surprised at the new scenes that are in there. It probably only counts for a small amount of scenes that were cut from the theatrical release. The original cut was much, much longer, and they cut it down. And some of the stuff that they shot didn't even make it into the original cut. They actually shot fantasy scenes to illustrate what Robert E. Howard's work was like, right? They actually shot scenes from like Conan stories with nudity and all of that. However, we're never going to see those scenes because when the director saw them after they'd been done, he ordered all of the film to be destroyed. So I am a little curious about those scenes, but since this movie is such a masterpiece, I'm going to trust his judgment on that one. It is such a good movie, and it remains one of my favorite movies of all time, even after all these years. It was originally released in 1996, and it still holds up today. Of course, it deals with Robert E. Howard, whose work I deeply love. But even if you took that out, right, even if you didn't care about Robert E. Howard, this is such a great movie. Just great acting, great story, just really gets into the depths of, creativity and writing and, Robert E. Howard's kind of cynical views of society and things like that. It's just such an interesting piece of work and such a great bit of filmmaking. And so this review was actually a request from one of my viewers, and I want to thank them for that request because I haven't seen this thing in so many years. And, when you do that, you're never sure if you like something from nostalgia or if it was really that good. And it's always nice to rewatch something and find out it was really that damn good. All right, guys, like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, see ya.